Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from Annie News. We've got another content video for ReZero. Garfield's fight. Absolutely awesome. I love Garfield. It's like its whole character development and everything within the show is just fantastic. I think I've cried more watching Garfield's backstory and everything than anyone else's. This fight was boss, the four-armed dude who would only use. Trying to remember. God, it's been a while. He would only use more than two if he felt like his opponent was worthy of using them. So that was a cool little thing to see him be like. So, but anyway, yeah, let's see what got left out, changed, or put in.
As amazing as it was to watch such an incredible scene wrap up the Garfield versus Kurgan fight, this was probably the battle that got the least amount of attention. Reason being that there was so much more to it than just Garfield overcoming a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. The entire season we've been seeing Garfield's weaknesses exposed one by one, and it was only here that Garfield was finally able to accept them. So this fight was actually more so about Garfield overcoming himself, where before he was incapable of carrying all the people he wanted to support. By the end he realized he just needed to become stronger. The world was much larger than he initially thought, and his fight with Kurgan was a pivotal moment allowing him to realize that.
It's so good.
So, if you want to see what really went down between Gorgeous Tiger and the War God, this is everything the anime left out from it. It's an extremely impactful fight that develops Garfield's character tremendously.
Ooh.
There was also way more tactics involved, making the fight a whole lot more intense. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
To start things here outside the control tower, in addition to Wilhelm sharing the personal information about his wife, he would also reveal how these two corpse warriors were likely nowhere as close to how strong as they used to be. Such a revelation came as quite the shock for Garfield, since after fighting both in that one-sided beatdown...
Yeah, it's like you're telling me that these, were stronger than that. Oh my god.
Earlier, he couldn't imagine what would have happened if they were stronger. It was news that placed doubt into his own capabilities too, since as heroes from the legends he always looked up to, Garfield truly wondered if he could beat them. His true goal was obviously Capella and the tower, but standing in his way now was an obstacle that needed to be cleared first. Now, while Wilhelm would engage with a direct charge that spoke true to who he was, Garfield would jump from building to building, choosing to engage from an angle a bit more unconventional. Reason being that he knew attacking head-on would never work. That's just how legendary his opponent was.
God damn.
His attack was still blocked just as easily, but Garfield would continue his assault, raining blows from every possible angle he could. They were moves which actually seemed to be making an impact, since of the ones that connected, they were doing damage.
Oof.
Maybe not anything
cool.
particularly substantial, but certainly enough to leave a mark and make him bleed. So, this would be the moment where Garfield knew he should focus only on the fight, but as Ram had pointed out to him once before, too often would he let his mind wander away from it. Part of the reason why Garfield couldn't end the fight sooner was because he constantly changed focus to some other issue on his mind. Whether it be his siblings, his mom, the Archbishop, or Subaru.
I mean, he's got a lot going on. Dude's got a lot going on. My god, give him a break.
Distraction after distraction would prevent him from truly focusing on the opponent in front of him. They were the root cause of every advantage Kurgan gained here. One such advantage was a brutal pummeling, leaving Garfield in fear, since Kurgan's relentless onslaught combined with his tower-like stature reminded Garfield why he'd earned the title of God of War in the first place.
Damn.
Garfield knew this wasn't the time to act all scared, but no matter how hard he tried to hype himself up, deep down he knew the courage he was building was nothing but fake. Even so, it was with this fake courage that Garfield would unleash an attack containing all the strength he could muster. By focusing the power of the earth into one single point, Garfield would launch himself with enough force to level an entire building, only to be stopped dead in his tracks by Kurgan's two cleavers.
Mate.
This went to show...
Imagine going in full, pelt, I'm gonna kick this guy, and then it's just, oh no, oh my god, what do I do? I'm in midair, Jesus.
How outmatched Garfield was, since the attack wasn't nullified, parried, or deflected. It was simply endured in a way that showed Garfield he wasn't strong enough. In this contest of what was essentially raw power, Garfield had failed to keep up with the legendary warrior he was fighting against. Where he landed after would leave him in the position to get squashed by Capella's decoy, swallowing him whole in what was essentially an absurdly large mass of blood. It was an amorphous blob of it Garfield couldn't tell whether it was alive or not. Such a notion was something he would have considered crazy before, but now that the city was crawling with lifeless corpse soldiers and demi-beasts, the idea that there was also a slithering mass of blood didn't seem all that impossible anymore. So, it was this slime that left Garfield in a more precarious situation than what we saw in the anime, since with all 5 of his senses being overwhelmed by it, he was quickly running out of air with no way to escape.
Oh, what game's that from? Mario? Was that Mario?
On the 6th sense that Subaru had taught him, but once again his idle thoughts prevented him from doing anything. Even as he gasped for air and filled his lungs with blood, his idle thoughts would continue to prevail regardless. They seemed like they were going to continue all the way to the bitter end here. Luckily, his self-preservation...
I was just reading my can that I've got on backup. That literally says "to the bitter end" there, as he said that, and that was just really weird. He literally said "to the bitter end" as I was reading the can. Anyway, that was odd.
Instinct did kick in, so that was what enabled him to escape the pathetic death awaiting him. It was the moment his transformed claws breached the surface of this monstrosity that Garfield instinctively knew he had killed it. Whatever life Capella imbued into it was now gone. Kurgan wouldn't give him a single breath to recover though, since the moment Garfield cleared himself of the blood's deadly embrace, a barrage of fists sent him flying far away from where the fight initially began. It was a relentless attack that shattered his bones and ruptured his organs. Compared to the agony of drowning in blood though, this was nothing more than a pinch to him. It was then that a group of demi-beasts would surround Garfield like how
I love their design as well, by the way.
Where here we saw him hesitate to kill them, in the novel Garfield wasted no time destroying them.
Oh.
He knew on an instinctual level they needed to be taken care of.
That's interesting. So, original source material, he's like, nah, take them out. This one, it's like,
Kurgan's intervention would result in the slaughter of these demi-beasts as well, but not for the reason that you might think. You see, his desire for a 1v1 was simply a reflex from the warrior code ingrained into him. Though his mind was gone, Kurgan's body wanted to preserve this match between War God and War Tiger. It was a desire that led him to take on both Garfield and the demi-beasts together. With one hand, he would continue punching Garfield, while with the other 7 he would take care of the demi-beasts jumping at him now. Both were handled with the same finesse and confidence we've come to expect from Kurgan. So, more bones would shatter and flesh be opened, but Garfield's recovery magic would enable him to fix himself up. The only thing Garfield really needed to focus on then was creating openings so he could do it. It's kind of like when waiting for the right time to heal during a boss fight in a Souls game.
Right, yeah.
Very few instances were given for Garfield to do so, but with some clever tactics and a little ingenuity, he was able to catch Kurgan off guard by transforming back into his human form. With his tiger form getting absolutely pummeled, Garfield was able to switch back then catch Kurgan in a grapple. He would then toss Kurgan straight through the wall of the control tower, bringing the fight to a more intimate location. It's here punches would be met with punches and kicks met with kicks, all resulting in this intense back and forth of offense and defense. Now, with this being the location Garfield had set out to go in the first place, a simple observation of the inside would reveal it was all just bait. Capella had left everything behind as a decoy and was now nowhere to be found by anyone. This was an incredibly bad turn of events for the home team, since Capella's absence meant that she could turn up anywhere. That being the case, Garfield knew he needed to inform those back at base immediately. It was right as he was about to reach out and grab the conversation mirror, though, that Kurgan would re-engage and continue his beatdown. It's here the novel gives a pretty interesting breakdown of how an encounter like this goes, so if you were wondering how Garfield dealt with each of his arms, this would be a standard case going through a full route with them. As
is he going to read it?
I'm sure you could tell.
So, blocking one punch with his shield and dodging the next, Garfield launched himself into the air to evade the third. He deflected the fourth to soften the impact and matched the fifth with a full-strength punch. Jesus Christ. The sixth shattered his jaw, but he managed to avoid sustaining a lethal blow, and tensed his abs to endure the seventh, which crashed into his midsection. It was the eighth that connected directly with his face, dazing him. Jesus Christ.
There was only so much he could do when facing 8 consecutive attacks like
That's
this.
crazy.
Now, What hurt Garfiel even more than any of this was the blow to his pride that came when he saw Kurgan wasn't even trying. Like, until now he still hadn't used any of his swords, so Garfiel knew he was just being toyed with. So, the fact Kurgan could have ended the fight yet didn't shattered every part of him he once valued as a warrior. It was humiliating treatment that Garfiel would have taken death over. It was then that Garfiel's idle thoughts would remind him why he was even doing all of this, revitalizing his will to fight in a way that even Kurgan took notice of. Though the outcome was still looking grim, the familiar voices in Garfiel's head encouraged him to keep pushing forward regardless. It rebuilt his confidence in a way that clearly resonated with Kurgan, a change in demeanor that would lead him to finally draw his two devil cleavers. This is where the fight really begins, but not before a bit of backstory about Kurgan himself.
Ooh.
We already know his people were discriminated and Kurgan saved them, but what was left out was how exactly that happened. You see, with the many-armed tribe always being treated as inferior, they were never able to settle down into a homeland they could call their own.
Which is so weird. How could you look at someone like with bloody 6 arms and go, wow, what a fucking weakling. He's got 6 arms, he's gonna fuck you up.
The one they had was lost in a battle a long time ago, so now they were constantly on the move, searching for one. Eventually, they would settle down in a land the local lord didn't approve of, so in an attempt to clear his territory of the inferior race currently blemishing it, the lord would send his soldiers to evict them. It was Kurgan who had killed every last one of them, then, after bringing the fight all the way to the local lord's manor, Kurgan would concede and offer his services as the Lord's new captain.
Oh.
It was from there he would earn his valor on countless battlefields, eventually building himself up to the legend he was today. So, it was this icon of martial supremacy that Garfiel was up against, bringing us to the showdown in the sewers we saw here. Their joint tumble in the water would lead to an even more fierce exchange underneath it, where, though submerged and completely unable to see, the two would somehow find each other and continue to fight. It was as if their instincts were leading them right to each other. For Garfiel, who still needed air though, this exchange was especially brutal. He couldn't breathe and his brain was losing oxygen, so where Kurgan could continue on like normal, Garfiel was struggling just to survive. Once again, Kurgan could have done nothing and won the fight here, yet whether out of nobility or a simple sense to keep on fighting, he would break the wall of the waterway and allow Garfiel to keep on living. This is where the anime would divert yet again, since where here demi-beasts would arrive to help Garfiel overcome this inner conflict of his, instead there was only Kurgan.
Huh.
He would fall into the shelter shortly after Garfiel, then immediately continue his assault without the slightest bit of hesitation. There was no emotional reunion with Raph or Fred, just more fighting and even more struggling.
Like I said, all what was added. Love it.
Like, the initial attacks Kurgan engaged with had caught Garfiel off guard, so he was completely susceptible to an 8-punch combo, leaving him broken. The next 8 were blocked, evaded, dodged, parried, ducked, deflected, and matched in that order, reinforcing the fact he was at an overwhelming disadvantage. I mean, for every one of his attacks, Garfiel had to put up with 8. It was this disparity that actually went to encourage Garfiel, since now Kurgan was holding 3 of his cleavers. Seeing his opponent finally start to take him seriously resonated deeply considering all that happened prior. There was a certain satisfaction that came from knowing a legendary figure such as this saw him as a warrior too. After that encounter with Reinhardt, the incident with his mother and his incompetence with Mimi, the powerlessness he felt from then was slowly dissipating. The past 2 days had exposed all his weaknesses at once, but here Kurgan was helping him find his strength again. He had reignited the spirit Garfiel had lost, and it was all from the simple act of drawing his weapons. So, though Kurgan couldn't realize what exactly he had done for Garfiel, his impact on him was immeasurable. Words couldn't begin to describe how much of an honor all this was for Garfiel. Now, that's one of the aspects I think is hard to tell in the anime, since this whole fight was all about developing Garfiel. Where initially he started out as this unwavering child Kurgan refused to acknowledge as a warrior, now he was an equal befitting proper attention.
Now he's someone he's like, I'm gonna cut this bitch. It's like, I ain't using any of these knives, and it's like, all the knives!
Before, Kurgan had just kept him at a distance, seemingly out of pity, but now both were brimming with the insatiable desire to fight each other. It was a shared feeling that led to an intense stare-down. A stare-down which indicated the fight was going to be resolved with one single decisive clash. First, the embers of resistance would be ignited by Garfiel's presence, though, leading the spectators to cheer him on just like how we saw in the anime. If Subaru's speech was what lit the match, Garfiel's resolve here was the fuel keeping that fire going. The people's encouragement served as fuel to him as well, and that would have him entering the duel more confident than ever. Now, the part of this duel that makes it so interesting in the novel is that it was essentially Garfiel's one attack against Kurgan's 8. Their past exchanges showed us that that was always the case here, so if Garfiel wanted to come out on top, he'd first need to overcome the combo of 8 he'd been dealing with before. So, the first attack came as a horizontal slash to the torso, one he'd avoid by jumping then stepping on the blade to stop it.
Cool.
The second was an arc from Kurgan's left side, a powerful attack which Garfiel would shield with both his arms. It was a blow far too powerful for him to handle though, since not only did the impact crumple his entire arm, it also broke both his shoulder and his wrist. 6 attacks were still to follow after this, so next Garfiel had to deal with a simultaneous sequence of barehanded attacks. They were 2 fists, one aimed at his torso and the other his neck. Both would have been fatal had they gone undefended, but Garfiel's abs would absorb most of the blow at the torso, while the punch aimed for his neck would get blocked by his already broken arm. In the end, the ligament
Already
was
broken.
nothing more than a shattered mess,
that's
barely
hurting.
recognizable from how it was supposed to be. The rest of the impact was stopped with Garfiel's forehead,
So
bringing him
sick how he
halfway
did
to where he wanted to be. The 5th and 6th attack would come barehanded as well, making it clear the 3rd cleaver was being saved for the end. As for how Garfiel avoided this, well, his arm was too messed up to defend, so instead Garfiel relied on his magic. He would use the Blessing of Earth to create a small opening for himself, allowing him to just barely maneuver between the gap existing between the fists coming towards him. It was an incredible display of decisiveness that went to shock even him. It was then that Kurgan would skip the 7th attack and go straight to the 8th, leading to a slash that could neither be evaded nor intercepted. This was the ultimate move Kurgan could muster, and the only choice Garfiel had now was pure defense. It was an instantaneous decision that detached himself from the world around him. Color faded and sound dissipated, leaving nothing in his periphery other than Kurgan and the slash coming towards him. For Garfiel, this was a state of perfect focus. The only thing left in his consciousness was the target in front of him. So, with everything
All
now
that
in
was
slow
left
motion, all Garfiel
was to
could do
win.
was win. It was the
To
perfect
destroy.
opportunity for his idle thoughts to return again, but now they were memories of all the people he cared for. A lot of them were people he didn't know of before Sanctuary, so Garfiel couldn't help but wonder if they were what was making him weak. I mean, it was the events in Sanctuary that started exposing his weaknesses to him. His encounter with Reinhardt then showed him just how big the world was, so for a moment Garfiel truly thought holding on to more was making him weaker. It was when he really thought about it though that Garfiel realized that was impossible. Like, if all those precious to him was in fact what was making him weaker, then what even was the point of living? It was then Garfiel finally understood he just needed to become stronger, and the moment he did, all his worries just vanished. If he wasn't strong enough to hold all the new things he now held dear, then all he needed to do was get stronger. It was a simple solution to everything that was haunting him.
Yeah, just get
Finally,
stronger.
Kurgan's slash would connect with the good arm Garfiel had left, shattering it to the same state that the right was in. The thing is, with the attack being unleashed from the same arm Garfiel had injured earlier, it was the one spot most prone to being countered. This was a weakness Kurgan would have noticed had he been alive, since the pain from such an injury would have made him unleash the final attack from a better arm.
Right.
It's because he didn't, though, that Garfiel blocking the attack head-on would rupture Kurgan's arm in the process.
Interesting.
The deep
That's
gash
so cool.
Garfiel left earlier was now the pivotal instrument in turning the tables here. Garfiel didn't have any more claws to attack with, but what he did have was his fangs. So, after enduring all 8 arms and creating an opening for himself, Garfiel would lunge face first and rip out half of Kurgan's neck. The whole exchange might have gone unnoticed had you watched the scene only once, but it was exactly what happened in the anime too. Mind you, the attack Garfield landed was much smaller in the anime.
Right, okay.
So, this would be the end for Kurgan, and with a single word of commendation, the hero would crumble mercilessly back into the ash from which he was formed. It was an unfulfilling end to the battle which brought fulfillment to Garfield. But yeah, that was the full extent of their fight together.
Sick.
I really liked how it served to develop Garfield, so I'd love to see what you all thought as well. Did you think the anime did justice to Garfield's character, or do you think they could have done more to convey his triumph over his weakness?
I liked it.
Let me know down in the comments, and if you liked the video, then leave a like. I'll be back again with another one of these next week. So, until next time.
Ciao. Very cool. I do like checking these out, but it's just slightly annoying as well, isn't it? Because like, if you were watching it as it was coming out, ReZero, it's one of the few shows that I watch weekly when it's out. Cause like, well, and then you're watching these now, it's like, oh, I don't quite remember 100% details. But still, that was pretty cool to check out the differences in that. And again, stuff was thrown in, and it's always nice to have that pointed out as well. But yeah, we'll check out the next one when that comes out, and thanks for watching.